Hello, hello, it's Jackie Turner again. We are reading Bending Willow. There it is. Today, the girls are still at Burning Man. They're finding their way around, getting to know things. And as a writer, sometimes I like to put little Easter eggs, they call them, into the stories that people that know me would enjoy. And in this particular chapter, there's a character that's based on my daughter and my granddaughter, so keep your eyes open for that. Chapter 7 of Bending Willow. By the third day, Riley was pretty tired of Burning Man. She was sick of the heat and the dust, and she wanted to get back to their trip to Idaho, but she hadn't figured out how to do that yet. She was also tired of watching grown-ups act like kids, drinking at night and being grumpy in the mornings. They followed River around for part of each day, Mia bugging him for a Burning Man name, and River saying it hadn't come yet. They learned to stay up later and sleep in longer so they could find breakfast in the morning. They also learned to brush their teeth in porta potties because you weren't allowed to even spit toothpaste into the playa dust. Because of this, Riley only made them brush their teeth once a day. Another bit of happiness for Mia. They found shade and took naps in the afternoon. Their favorite place was called the Cat in the Hat structure in the Dr. Seuss camp. It was a nice place to sit and had green eggs in the morning. Most of the camps were filling people's water bottles. Riley was surprised that no one questioned their story about having an uncle somewhere in the camp. They ended up sleeping on the same couch each night. The camp was called Playa International, and most of the people staying there were from other countries. They were very friendly, treating Mia and Riley like members of the camp. Riley met people from places she probably couldn't even find on a map. Two Israeli girls spent hours braiding Mia's hair into little braids all over her head and weaving in colorful ribbons. They would have done Riley's hair too, but she turned them down. They did talk her into adding a few ribbons, though. On the fifth day in camp, the first sandstorm hit. It was still morning, and Mia had found a few kids to play with who were closer to her age. They were kicking a ball around while Riley sat watching them play. She tried to read her book, but her mind kept wandering. How were they going to get to Idaho? She'd come to the conclusion that she was going to have to ask River for help. Just thinking about that made her stomach do flip-flops. But she could think of no other way. She was considering how to ask him when she felt the wind blowing dust in her eyes. Riley bolted to her feet. She couldn't see Mia or the other kids anymore. Dust swirled around, so thick she could barely see 2 feet in front of her. She pulled on her swim goggles. The goggles helped keep the dust out of her eyes, but they didn't help her see. Mia! Mia! Riley ran toward where she had last seen the children, choking on the dust that flew down her throat and into her nose. She remembered her kerchief and quickly pulled it up over her nose and mouth. Would Mia remember her kerchief? Mia! Riley screamed again, panic rising in her throat. Quick, come in here, a woman yelled. Someone grabbed Riley by the arm and dragged her into the tent. The flap closed suddenly and she heard a zipping noise. Riley swallowed a scream, struggling to reach the tent door, but somebody held her back. Let me go! Mia was out there somewhere in the dust. You can't go out into a dust storm. You need to stay here till it passes. Riley yanked off her goggles and spun around to the sweet voice. She stared up into a beautiful blonde woman who was holding her, a woman with blue eyes, a freckled nose, and hair pulled back in braids. But Mia's out there, Riley said. My sister's out there. Don't worry, the woman said. Someone will take care of her until this passes. Riley looked around the tent room. It was huge, much bigger than most tents. The floor was covered knee-deep in pillows. Where are we? She asked, confused. "This is my favorite place to come and rest and get out of the weather," the woman said. "It's put here for that purpose. I came to give Juliet a nap." She waved at a pile of pillows near the back wall where a toddler was sleeping. A baby? She hadn't seen a baby in Black Rock City until now. "Yes," said the woman, "I'm Poppet, and that is Juliet." Riley looked at the closed tent flap. "Are you sure my sister's okay?" "I'm sure, and I'll help you look for her after the wind dies down if you want." Riley felt guilty about not insisting that she had to look for Mia, but she loved the tent. She loved Poppet, and she loved Juliet most of all. Poppet was with the Playa International Group and had only come for the last 2 days of Burning Man. "Burning Man can be hard with a baby," Poppet said, nodding at the sleeping child. Riley could see why. Juliet was at that age when babies are into everything. After she woke up, she ran and stacked pillows and climbed them and never stopped moving. Suddenly, Riley realized she could stop feeling responsible and just relax. She wasn't too hot. She wasn't too cold. She didn't have to keep an eye on Mia, although she was still worried about her. Poppet was wonderful. She talked to Riley as if she were an adult, asking her opinions about music, movies, and life in general. Riley knew she'd never have an older sister, but if she did, she'd want her to be just like Poppet. The wind howled for 2 hours, but for Riley, it was over too soon. She was playing patty cake with Juliet when the tent flap unzipped. A huge man entered the tent and instantly pulled Poppet into a hug. "I hoped I'd find you here," he said. "The worst of it is over now." Juliet ran and flung herself against the giant's knees. Poppet turned toward Riley. "This is Thundercat, my husband." Wow! Thundercat was possibly the tallest man Riley had ever seen. He was wearing what looked like a brown skirt and huge black work boots and a flowing red cape tied around his neck. His head almost hit the top of the tent, but he seemed incredibly gentle as he held both Juliet and Poppet in his arms. "Hey, Scout," he said to Riley with a friendly smile. "Haven't I seen you around the camp?" "Yes," said Riley. "My sister Mia and I—" "Mia!" She dashed for the tent flap, then ran back and gave Poppet a hug, reaching up to squeeze Juliet's chubby arm. "Thank you so much," Riley said. "Do you want me to help you look?" Poppet asked. "No," Riley said, ducking through the flap. "I think I know where she is." Riley stood outside trying to orient herself. The lamps of the center camp and the porta potties weren't that far away. Would Mia remember their meeting place? It took only a few minutes to reach the porta potties. Riley raced up and down the row shouting Mia's name. Her voice got hoarse as the minutes ticked by. Finally, she heard the most beautiful sound in the world. "Riley!" Riley spun around as Mia pulled away from the woman who'd been holding her hand and dashed into Riley's arms. The woman waved and turned away. "I was so scared in the wind," Mia said in Riley's ear, "but Tabitha's mom came and took us into her tent and then brought me to find you." Poppet had been right. Mia was fine. That's the end of the chapter. So you probably know that Poppet and Juliet are my daughter and my granddaughter, and Poppet is my daughter's Burning Man name. So it was kind of fun to sneak them into the story because Juliet has actually been to Burning Man 3 or 4 times. I can't even remember. Tune in next time for chapter 8. Bye for now.